This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am thrilled. I typically am thrilled. I've got a lot of reasons to be thrilled, but today I'm really thrilled to host this guest. Stephanie has got a background that is extraordinary. And I'm going to give you her last name in a minute here, but I want to just kind of speak about this. When you think about, I'm a pilot. I've got my ticket when I was, oh goodness, I don't know how old, but it was in 1972, I think it was. So I've been, I've flown skydivers, I've flown aerobatics, gliders, just all kinds of stuff. And I've always been fascinated by the aviation industry. And at one time I thought about possibly becoming a pilot commercially. Never did that. I just decided to play instead. My guest today has got extensive background. She's actually the first African-American CEO of an aviation company. I just kind of plant that flag here. But more than that, she's got an expertise in what it means to actually lead in some incredibly diverse environments. And just in the green room before we went live on this, she said something to me that I just kind of lit up about. And it has to do, DEI. We're going to step on that landmine here real quick. But it's not about DEI, it's about ROI. And I can't get ROI unless I'm really attending to, in the appropriate way, DEI. And she's got a book out, and I want to talk about this book specifically, Ally Leadership, ALY. It's an acronym. We'll unbundle that in a little bit here. But Ally Leadership, How to Lead People Who Are Not Like You. The author is Stephanie Chung. And she's led billion-dollar organizations. She has got an incredibly diverse career over 30 plus years. And just the little bit of time we had in the green room before we started broadcasting here, she is an absolute delight. She's got if you're watching this on video, and hopefully you are on the Spotify channel on this, she's got one of the most beautiful smiles I've seen in a long time. So, yeah, Stephanie,
keep
welcome
talking,
to the
Blaine.
show. Keep talking. Come on.
Keep going. I'm like, I don't need to say anything. Thank you so much. What a very warm welcome. And I am so delighted to be here with you. I know that we're going to have a ton of fun, you and I. So thank you for that. And I didn't realize you were a pilot. So this makes me even like you more.
Yeah. Oh, I've done some weird stuff. In my 100th hour, I flew upside down over Portland, Oregon. It was illegal as hell. We were at night.
No.
Yeah, I was kind of the guy that I learned to fly with. And it was in a Citabria, an aerobatic plane. Yeah.
Yep.
Tandem seating, and we're just kind of flying along. He looked at he said, you just clicked over 100 hours. And I went,
no.
Really? and immediately we went inverted. You can't do that. I'm going,
that's right.
Who are you going to tell?
Well, congratulations. And it's never too late, Blaine. We got a pilot shortage. So anytime you want to get back in there, let me know.
There we go. Not sure I could pass a medical anymore on an annual basis here. The planes are too fast for me. I can't keep in front of them. So let's talk about leadership. Typically, leadership in business, typically I've got a question that I start the program with, which is, when you hear the term the soul of business, and then I haven't talked about the businesses that you actually shepherded. Most people are going to be very familiar with them. You were the chief growth officer at Wheels Up, and you were the president of JetSuite. And I've actually been fortunate enough to fly with both.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I like going private. It's a nice way to fly. Mm-hmm. But the term, the soul of business, what does that evoke for you? What does that kind of bring up in your mind?
Yeah. So when I think of, thank you for the question, actually. When I think of the word soul, it just goes, it penetrates, right? It goes deep, 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 deep down to the bones. And so when I think about the soul of leadership, I personally do believe that everything truly does rise and fall on leadership.
Yeah.
And that, at the end of the day, it's a huge responsibility. And so for me personally, I'm also a woman of faith. And so I also believe that when you have the ability and the honor of being able to be classified as a leader, if you will, where you've got responsibility of other people, underneath you, for lack of a better word, I believe one day I'm going to be held accountable to that.
Yeah.
And so how well did I do it? Did I use my influence, my, privilege, my words, my gifts, my talents? Did I use that to actually bless and lift up people who I had the, honor of being able to lead? Or did I use it to hurt them? Right. And so, because, as sometimes leaders can hurt without really intending to, but
Yep.
just not being responsible with their powers. So when I think of the soul of business, I truly think of it, from not just a regular ROI perspective, but something much, much, much deeper for me, which is, the responsibility of business as well, and the influence and the honor of being able to lead people in general, who, I feel like God's trusted me with this most important asset, right?
Yeah.
Which is human beings. And so that's what the soul of business means to me.
I love, you've got basically two parts embedded in that answer. One is the responsibility of business. And
Yeah.
I've come to believe over, 40 plus years that I've been consulting and coaching and teaching leadership around the world, that the purpose of business is to enhance the quality of life on the planet. That's the
Yes.
purpose of business. Now,
Yeah.
you got to make money in order to stay in business.
Yeah.
But if you're enhancing, if people feel good about themselves, they feel uplifted when they're in the presence of your service or your product, they're going to beat a path to your door.
That's right.
How you sustain that, I think, is a really interesting question. And
Yes.
the question of sustainability comes into play, sustainable success.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to just check this out with you.
Yeah.
When organizations are founded, the soul is pretty evident.
Mm-hmm.
In the founding moments in the organization, it's kind of like, we've got this idea. Let's go to market with
Let's
this
do
idea.
it. Yeah.
And then the market rewards us, and then we start building a business around that idea. And over time, the business becomes in the forefront, and the soul starts to recede.
Yeah.
And when we lose connection to that, in that vivifying kernel, we begin to lose the vitality of the organization itself. So in your leadership capacity, and this is where people come into play here, all an organization is a collection of people that are in relationship. And if the relationships are working pretty good, you got a pretty good shot at being successful.
Yeah.
Not just the interpersonal, but the connection, the relation people have with the soul of the business, the people have with the beliefs that they have about what the business is, for the sake of what are we in business. You were and are extraordinarily successful at keeping that connection alive.
Yeah.
What do you do that, in your observation and experience, a lot of quote unquote leaders do not do?
Oh, yes. I love that question. I love that. And I can answer that very easily, which is because it touches on what you're talking about, right? People want to know, the average employee, in my experience, really wants to know a couple things. What business are we in? And what is it that I do that contributes to what we do as a business? It's really simple, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science, right? And I always encourage leaders, you will be surprised. Just ask your people, what business are we in? And how do we make money as a business? And you'll be shocked at the answers that you're going to receive, right? And so, for me, whenever I was leading companies or teams, I always insisted not to have an ignorant team. Like, I want this team to understand the business that we're in. And so I'll give you an example. So let's say when I was leading sales teams, a lot of times if you ask a sales team, well, how do we make money? They're going to say, we make money when I hit my quota. Yeah. Right. And that's true to some extent, but there's so many other ways that we make money, and the sales team may not know that. Right. And so for an example, in private aviation, we'll say, when I asked one of the teams that I was leading that question, they said, well, Steph, when we sell a plane, we make money. I was like, yeah, of course. But how else do we make money? And there was crickets. And
Yeah.
so then, I was like, okay, well, we make money when we sell the plane, when we, get rid of the plane, when, pilots for their insurance, when we hangar the plane. I mean, there's, fuel. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that the business makes money. Now, why that's important is because if they're out there negotiating and they're representing the business, well, it's good for them to have an understanding of how does the business actually work, because that's going to change their positioning, right?
Yep.
My job isn't just as a leader to raise up good salespeople. My job as a leader is to create strong business professionals who happen to be the salespeople with the organization. But I need them to be a business executive first, so they understand business, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it. The other way is when, thinking about leaders, I always, at least again, whenever I ran companies, is how do you rally the troops? So if you understand the business that we're in, and you understand how the business makes money, and you understand that what your contribution is, regardless of what role you play in the organization, how it contributes to the overall success of the business. Well, then now you've got a team that's like, they understand the vision, which is bigger than themselves. They understand what role they play in the vision. And now they're like, okay, like, let's do this, because you've now tapped into the basic necessity that all of us want, which is, the bigness of why am I here? What is it? Does what I do actually matter? And so that's kind of how I look at everything. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real life story that I hope I can get through without crying, right? So when I became the president of one of the companies that did, to your point, made me the first Black person in U.S. history to ever lead a major private aviation company. And so it had gotten a lot of press. And one particular company, a news company, had done an interview on me. And so this particular day, they were going to show the interview. And so the whole team at the headquarters was like, oh my gosh, let's go watch. Everybody, the TV was set up. Everybody at headquarters could come and watch this interview because the interview was really signifying that, I was the first, right? So I hadn't seen the interview beforehand. I taped the interview, but I hadn't seen it beforehand. So I'm sitting there.
Version,
yeah, exactly. I'm sitting there with my team, and we're all getting ready to watch this together. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope I didn't do or say something stupid, right? And so the interview plays, and then at the end, I remember the team was just like, yeah, and you would have thought they won an award, right? And so they were so excited. And that, of course, made me feel good. And so I stood up and I was like, all right, guys, how did I do? Hopefully. And they're like, oh my God, that was great. And one gentleman jumped up and ran over to the front of the room, which is where I was standing, gave me a hug, and then turned to all of his peers and said, guys, we just made history. And what it did for me was, because I was carrying the weight of being the first, I was just focused in on, okay, I knew that this was important for, let's say, for my race. But what I didn't realize is this was important for my team and the organization, because as far as they were concerned, something bigger than themselves, we just made history because we just became the first, right? Yeah. And it was such a sense of pride that they had. So they're all high-fiving each other and shaking each other's hands and hugging each other, and tears are flowing, and there was just so much joy. And it humbled me, Blaine, in such a way, because it made me realize that my own thinking wasn't big enough, right? I was just kind of seeing what it was for, for women or for, my race, but not for my employees and my organization and my entire industry and my board. And so I hadn't seen the bigness of what this really meant. We together made history. So that's what I would share for leaders is it's so, the responsibility is so magnificent if you embrace it. Right. But a lot of times right now, there's so much going on. It's hard to lead. And so most leaders are just running around with their hair on fire, trying to survive. Right. But, I encourage people to step out and kind of look at the opportunity in front of you. It really is an honor and a blessing should you choose to look at it that way.
I love that story. I mean, I can't think of a better articulated example of something that I call the for the sake of what. It's kind of like, I had this award, I had this recognition for the sake of what? That expands, the whole dynamic. And there's a distinction that I think, and I've got chills while I'm talking right now, between motivating a team, as an example, and inspiring a team.
Yes.
And motivation is an externally driven process. I mean, carrot and stick. But the inspiration that you speak to, and this kind of goes full circle back to, that you tap into that soul, that for the sake of what,
That's
It's
right.
bigger than the individual, and it's because it's bigger, and it's kind of like it's shiny, and it's kind of like, ooh,
Yes.
I want to be part of that. That's
Yes. Yes.
inspiration, and
Yes.
it's self-fueling. You don't have to keep
Hmm.
coming back to the trough.
That's right, exactly. And think about, right? If we can definitely get leaders to be thinking and operating at that level, Blaine,
Yeah,
now you don't have to worry about how do I talk, attract top talent? How do I keep top talent? Because those are the folks that don't leave, right? Because they feel and they get a sense of, oh, we're actually doing something worthwhile here.
yeah.
And again, trying to, and then they're going to beat down the doors to come work for you because people want to participate in something bigger than themselves. And I just believe
Always.
that, everyone's just overcomplicating so much stuff these days that
Oh,
it's exhausting. It's exhausting and it's not effective. And
yeah.
when you look at something as simple as engagement scores, based on the Gallup
Mm.
studies, it's getting from bad to worse.
Oh,
And it doesn't need to be this way. Don't even
eighty-seven
get me
percent
going on that
Oh
tangent,
boy,
Bill Blaine.
we can both go down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole. I guarantee it. I mean, that survey that Gallup does, I don't think the metrics have changed in the last 25 years. It's
Yeah.
still 87%, 92% disengaged, emotionally
Yes.
disengaged.
Hmm.
And what's fascinating to me about that is we spend approximately
Hmm.
businesses spend about $42 billion globally
Yes.
on leadership development with the intent of moving the needle on that emotional engagement score, and it's not moving.
It's not
We're
moving. That's right.
focusing on the wrong thing, which leads me directly to the book that you've got over your shoulder there, Ally Leadership: How to Lead
Yes.
People Who Aren't Like You. But the acronym ALLY.
Hmm.
Let's take a little time here. I want to work with this.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So ALLY is an acronym and it stands for Ask, Listen, Learn, You Take Action. And all four of those pieces are necessary because sometimes people just go, oh, I ask and I listen and I maybe even learn some stuff. But if you don't take
Take
action,
action.
then it's just awareness. Right. And
Yeah.
so, that's awareness is good, but it's, we need execution these days, right? We need people who can actually get stuff done. And so, Ally Leadership, the reason why I wrote the book, Blaine, is because let's think of today's modern workforce. Right now, we have 6 generations at work, which is unheard of. And
Unheard of.
so
Yep.
we know that boomers don't think like Gen Z, the Zoomers, for an example, right? So
Boy,
every one of
my
those,
grandkids
yeah,
can attest to that. I can attest to
exactly.
that with my
Yeah,
grandkids.
definitely, right? So
What are you thinking?
what are you thinking? Exactly. They have a different expectation, different work ethic, different perspective. So all of the generations at work is really, that's a lot to handle. So that's
Yeah.
the first thing. Second thing is we have women as the majority of the population.
Yep.
So that changes the dynamics because women, we see things differently. We communicate differently. Then you've got all the ethnic demographics that are, changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that changes the dynamics of work. Plus you have people who are, able-bodied folks or neurodiversity or LGBTQ plus, the list goes on and on and on. So what we have in today's modern workforce is we have a whole lot of people who are not like each other and
Yeah.
they're not like you, the leader, right? So as the leader, now you've got to take all the societal changes and the workforce changes and still figure out how you're going to help your people win. And so the reason why I wrote the book was to say, listen, I come from a male dominated industry, and yet I'm a woman and I'm a woman of color who was able to make it up to the highest level. And here's how I did it, in an industry where no one looked like me, didn't have the same background as me, and so on and so forth. And so here's the playbook in hopes that it will help other leaders be able to do it as well. Because anyone that's in leadership right now, this is the bottom line. We don't have to have a discussion anymore about diverse teams. And when I say diverse, I'm not dumbing it down just to race and gender, but diverse in the sense of communication skills, exactly, neurodiversity, everything. So people who are not like you is pretty much everyone. And so it's not about DEI, right? It's literally everybody.
Put a pin in that. People that are not like you is just about everyone.
Everyone. So it's like, let's not just make this such a basic conversation. It is literally every single leader today has to know. I would say you have to know how to lead all God's children, every race, every creed, every gender. That's the job. Yep. And if either you're going to get on board that train or you're going to be simply left behind because you don't have a lot of options at this point. We don't have to have a discussion about diverse teams. They simply outperform traditional teams. So that discussion's over. Don't even trust me. Go Google it. Harvard, Deloitte, McKinsey, everybody's got enough studies and research out there to prove that to be correct. So we don't need to have that discussion anymore. But what we do have to talk about, and this is why I wrote the book, is having a team that doesn't think alike and look alike and have the same background and have the same cultural, experience and so on and so forth. A team that's very, very different is actually great for the numbers and ROI, but it's hard to lead all those differences, right? And so I wrote the book to say, let's have an honest conversation. It is tough leading so many people who are not like you.
Yeah.
But here's how you do it. Here's how I did it in hopes that it helps you be able to do it a little bit easier, because I can respect and appreciate that leadership is hard.
Yeah, it is the way that I've come in the work that I do with my clients, come to define leadership is it got a couple components to it. It's about influencing, which takes command and control out of the mix, influencing others in order to co-create.
Yes.
Now, my idea now becomes our idea. So
That's
co-creation, and what's your part in this for the sake of what are we doing this? Co-create in order to create coordinated movement in the system in pursuit of a worthy ideal. So influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. Now, what's interesting for me about that piece, the influencing piece, the co-creation piece, people kind of go, makes sense. The coordinated movement piece, this is where it gets really interesting to me. Ideally, a leader is going to take an organization into an area that they've never been before. That's the nature of growth.
Yes.
And when you're in unfamiliar territory, people have got their biases about how stuff gets done, which, when you rub your hands together, people have seen me do this a lot. It generates heat. Yeah. That's a consequence of friction. Yeah. Another word for friction is conflict.
That's right.
Okay? So that coordinated movement piece is not about harmony as much as it is about the appropriate utilization of conflict. How do I use conflict? Because heat heat cleans things up, and it also generates light. So I can illuminate things, and this is where the value of diversity comes into play. It illuminates different perspectives, different points of view, but I can't get there unless I encourage the effective use of conflict. Now, that's my take on it. You've been in the trenches with this.
I
hold water?
Yes, I love it, Blaine. And I love it for a lot of reasons, because to me, what you're saying, I call it healthy confrontation, right? Or healthy constructive conflict. And that is where a lot of people are just, and oh man, you've touched upon something really good. That's where people are stuck, right? And so, let's, a lot of times what will happen is when, as you know, I'm a professional speaker. So that's really where I spend most of my time. And so whenever I'm keynoting, inevitably when I'm done, someone will come up to me, and we'll just use as an example, let's say it's a man that will come up and like, oh, Steph, I love the speech. This is great. I'm an ally. I'm a girl dad. I've been married to the same woman for, 50 years. Like, I'm all in, right? Go women, right? And I'm like, that's awesome. We all need allies. This is great. But then I always ask them this follow-up question, Blaine, which is, thank you so much for telling me that. And thank you for being an ally. Tell me, what have you done this week to show your allyship? And Blaine, unfortunately, it's crickets. They have nothing, no kind of proof. So the other part of what I want to encourage leaders, and why I'm so passionate about this subject, is you can't self-anoint yourself to be an ally. You've got to have some receipts to back it up. Yeah. And so just calling yourself an ally doesn't make you an ally, right? And so what I really want leaders to realize is sometimes what happens is people are afraid of saying the wrong thing, and therefore they say nothing. And then if you say nothing, you do nothing, right? And so now the just goes on and on and on. And so I don't want leaders to overcomplicate this. That's why the acronym Ask, Listen, Learn, You Take Action is so important, because if we think about it, when we watch 5-year-olds on a playground, that's all they're doing. They're asking, they're listening, they're learning, and then they're taking action, right? We all know how to do this. We were born to do this. It's life that kind of beats it out of us, right? We don't know how to do it anymore. But, so people then get really afraid to say the wrong thing. And I want everyone to step back from that. I personally, whenever I'm talking to someone that's completely different from me, maybe they're, different background, different, schooling experience, culture, anything, I may say to them, listen, I may say something, or even if I'm just new to the company, right? So this is a new experience for me. I may say, listen, there's a good possibility that I'm going to say something that may be incorrect or offensive. Not because I'm trying to be offensive, but because I don't know.
Yeah.
And when I do that, not if I do it, when I
When.
do it,
Yep.
I ask that you would stop me right then and there and actually correct me, because that's the only way I'm going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that when you come to people with that type of heart, because I always think this is a head and heart issue,
Yep.
right? We use the head part, it becomes very logical, but that doesn't always make the most sense. But without the heart part, so if you put the head and heart part in there, then if I just said that to someone and they know my heart now is I'm truly trying to learn,
Here,
then
yeah.
they're going to give me the grace that I need, right? And so therefore now they're going to, because what I find is, and especially a person who's part of a marginalized group, right? I'd
Mm-hmm.
much rather you come with the right heart and the right intent. Then I'll give you a lot of grace, right? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, you made a mistake. That's okay. I'd rather you talk to me and make a mistake than never talk to me at all, right?
Yeah.
Because you're afraid of making a mistake, you know?
Yeah.
So we've just got to really, we've just got to kind of pull the curtain back, if you will, and realize we all have so much more in common than not. But the best way to go about this whole thing is to realize that, I loved your whole piece of, we're all trying to get the same thing accomplished in the company if we know why we're here and what we exist to do. And then from there, everyone's going to give each other some grace.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If we're moving into unknown territory, it's guaranteed we're going to step on each other's toes.
That's right.
It just is. So let's not take it too personally.
That's right.
It's an old aphorism, if you're skating on thin ice, you may as well dance.
That's right. Exactly. One of my best CEOs I ever worked for, he was just, that was kind of his superpower. He always wanted a healthy team that could confront issues. And so he would come into, we were all the C-suite. He'd come in there and I always say he'd drop a bomb, let it explode, and then he'd walk away and make us figure it out, right? and what he was trying to do was, one of the things he noticed when he first came to the company is we were all very polite. And so, you go behind closed doors and you're all in agreement and nobody's saying anything and challenging anything. And then, you walk out and at the water cooler, everyone's pss, pss, pss.
Yep.
Well, that's like that's like a death sentence for any company. And most people hate it. And so now what, was great about having diverse teams is by default, like you said, there's going to be friction because people have they're seeing things from a different viewpoint. And that's a good thing. Because statistically, teams that are diverse are actually quicker to innovate.
Yeah.
And they're also quicker to speak up. And that's really what you want. You want a team that feels safe enough to say, you know what, I don't know that I agree that this is the best way to go about this. I think we should maybe think of it this way because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. That's how you have teams that, thrive. That's how your teams get healthy and challenged. And, you get the best talent and keep the best talent, because everybody loves to be able to be mentally challenged like that in a good way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm unfortunately getting close to, I hate it when my time runs out, especially if I'm going in a conversation like this. There's an old, I don't know if I'm going to date myself with this a little bit, but if you go back to the old early DOS days in computers,
yes,
when the DOS system would boot up, when you'd start the PC, not the Mac, but the PC, there was a couple of programs that would boot into system. They were called terminal stay resident programs, and the operating system wouldn't kick in until the TSRs, the terminal stay resident programs, kicked in. As far as I can tell, human beings in organizations have TSRs that they boot up with when they come in the office in the morning or in the plant. And it's who am I and where do I belong?
Yes,
and
that's it.
The problem with change, when change gets introduced, because I'm looking here at causing action, which is what leaders do. They cause things to move, they cause change, they cause things to be different. The relational dynamic between these questions that people have with these questions, the problem with change isn't the change itself typically, it's the disruption to relationships that the change causes. And these TSR questions are, who am I and where do I belong?
Yes.
In managing people that are not like me, leading people that are not like me, if I'm not aware that these operating questions are in play, I'm going to be dead in the water pretty quickly. So on a parting note here, What are a couple of suggestions that you have based on your experience for how a leader in an organization, and I'm not necessarily talking about titled leaders, but people that are actually wanting to cause movement, how can they begin to address these TSRs, these terminal stay resident questions that are identity based? Who am I? Where do I belong?
Yeah.
How can I get those to the surface?
Yeah, I would just say, spend more time getting to know people, right? Really put yourself out there and with whether it's your own employees or even if you want to practice, in what you may consider to be a safer zone, not with your employees, just, something my husband and I recently did. Because I definitely want to practice what I preach, is to put yourself in an environment where not everybody looks like you and thinks like you and has the same background as you. Go to a neighborhood, right? Like, we'll
Yeah.
make this a personal issue. Go to a neighborhood that you're not the majority, you're the minority, and go check out their restaurants or go to their art exhibits or go to their cultural museums and just go hang out. And what's going to happen is by default, it's going to expand your mind. Because all of us have an in-group and an out-group, and it's hardwired into our brain. And it has helped us for a lot of reasons over the centuries, but it also can hinder us. And so, one thing for your listeners is your brain will instantly, when it sees someone's face, it will put them in an in-group, we're like each other, or an out-group, we're not like each other. And the goal, you're not going to change that instinct, but you can certainly change the information you feed your brain so it's less likely and certainly not as quick to go put everybody that's not like you in your out group, right? Your goal is to expand your in group. How do I expand my in group? And we do it by making people more familiar. And how you do that is you're not going to get that, though I've written a book and I hope that you buy it, but you're not going to do that by just reading a book or sitting at your computer. You got to roll up your sleeves and get in the game. Like, you got to get out there, right? You have to do something. You got to take action, right?
You act.
Yes,
You
exactly.
move. Yeah.
New rules, new something. Just give yourself and your kids and your family, because this is how we change the world. Give everybody an opportunity to just expand their brain and their thought process and get out of what's familiar and comfortable. That's where real growth is going to happen for you individually. And then, of course, that allows you to be a leader who can grow other people as well, because you're not coming into the conversation with how you see the world, because who cares? It's their world, right? Yeah. You need to come into the conversation with, I don't know anything about your world, and I'm going to ask you questions I don't know the answer to. I'm coming in not with just empathy, I'm coming in with curiosity. And when you are a curious leader, you're going to ask questions you don't know the answer to. That's very different than asking questions that you do kind of already know the answer to. You just want to jump in there and share your viewpoint. Right?
I was right.
Yeah, exactly.
Folks, we've been listening to Stephanie Chung. And more than listening, we've been having, for me, a delightful conversation.
This was so fun.
I love this.
Best call of the day, Blaine.
It is. This works. People can find out more about you. I'm just going to toss out a couple of things here. You're on all the regular social channels here. But your website is stephaniechung.com.
Yes.
And we'll have that in the show notes, obviously. Keynote speaker extraordinaire, just a wealth of information, an incredible leader in her own right. She's got the credentials to prove it. I'm not just saying that. It's there. It's verifiable. She's the real deal. Steph, thank you so much for being an absolutely delightful guest, as well as an informative guest. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having me. This I literally enjoyed myself as well, Blaine. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Folks, thank you for listening. Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. As always, as you go forth and conquer this week, find ways in your life to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. Find things to give away, whether it's a hug, a smile, give an exorbitant tip to your waiter or waitress. Tip the bill. That's always kind of fun to do. It's a fun thing to do. Anyway, centers of accumulation don't work as well as centers of distribution. There's nothing in nature that serves as a center of accumulation solely. And that's true for life. That's also going to be true for your success in life. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.